Bob Stauffer has been calling Oilers games for years on 630 CHED. He joins us today from SoCal. I believe you're traveling with the club, are you not, Bobby?
I'm in San Jose. We flew last night after the game from it's a weird trip because normally you'd play Anaheim and LA back to back, but we got a game in San Jose here tomorrow. So we're going to go Anaheim, San Jose, and then back into Los Angeles Thursday. Right. Rod, I've flown with the team all season long, with the exception, we went to Florida. I went to Florida. It's amazing what you get in Florida. And as you know, if you did not test positive, you had to test on a fairly regular basis. At one point, you had to test every day. They changed that after the All-Star break. But then if you had not tested positive, you had to test coming in and out of the country. So I ended up testing positive in Chicago at the end of February, early March, and spent 5 days quarantining in Chicago, then went down to Bakersfield. So I've only, this is year 14, and I missed 5 games for the first time in my career as a result of being in COVID jail, and that's a whole other conversation for another time. But yes, I'm with the team. It was interesting last night, even with some of the players. There was several of the guys, and they know my affinity for the Alberta Golden Bears hockey program. Several of the players spoke to me about the national championship game. Alberta had a pretty dominant run in the second half of the season and had won 7-0 and 7-3 in their opening 2 games. The Saskatchewan Huskies might have had the second best team in the country, and they didn't even make it into the Canada West Final Four due to some injuries and goaltending issues. But Alberta ran into a goaltender named Alexis Gravel, who works with the likes of Derek Brassard, and he's a goaltender that takes shots in the summer. They can't believe he's playing college hockey, and he made 66 saves yesterday, and Alberta lost 5-4 in double overtime. So bit of an upset at the national championship level. But yeah, the Oilers 6-1 victory against Anaheim yesterday. They are going pretty good. Rod, they're a different team than they were maybe 2 months ago, and certainly Jay Woodcroft and Dave Manson have been part of that, and so too is Evander Kane and Brassard and Kulak and some of the additions they've made.
How much talk was there in the press box about Troy Terry not playing for Anaheim and the incident that went down Friday night? And what was your take on the fact that there's no discipline for Jay Beagle for beating him up?
Well, I'm a little old school, but I wasn't comfortable with what happened on the ice in that sequence. Like, if you're going to fight a guy who's going to fight you back. You know what I mean? There was discussion about it. Anaheim moved out. It wasn't just that they traded Nick Deslauriers; they traded Josh Manson as well. Hampus Lindholm. Pat Verbeek came in and did what a general manager would do, and it was interesting. So Bob Murray was in the building last night too, but Pat Verbeek did what a GM would do in that situation, and he went and got assets, real assets. He got a first and 2 seconds for Lindholm, plus a former first-round pick in Vikanainen. He got a second-round pick for Raquel. He got a third-round pick for Deslauriers. But they didn't have Deslauriers, and they didn't have Josh Manson, and Arizona took some liberties. And, some people would say, well, maybe Trevor Zegras shouldn't have been jabbing at the goaltender in a 5-0 game with 2 minutes left. That's somewhat fair. But I also don't think, Jay Beagle's been on the other end of it. Don't forget, you know this, Rod. Aaron Asham knocked him out, a number of years ago. So I kind of thought that was a tad excessive. And as a guy who's gone through the Oilers rebuild, when you're a broadcaster for a bad team, it doesn't get you any, a team that's struggling in that position. I believe that it just doesn't make sense to belittle an opponent ever. The Oilers had some tougher miles than they should have had, frankly. The 2009-10 season, the end of that season was bad. And 10-11, that was the first year of Taylor Hall. They ended up having number 1 picks. As it turned out, 4 out of 6 years. I don't think the plan in 2015 was to have a number 1 pick, but it sure worked out for them. But I just don't see where it makes sense to belittle opposition teams and opposition players. So, some people might say at times I'm hard on officiating, but that's because I want to see skilled players dominate in the game. So I guess you know where I stand on that issue. I was not comfortable with what happened on the ice, and I grew up playing against guys like Todd Ewan and John Kordick. So those guys let you know where you stood, and I wasn't afraid to hit back once in a while against guys like that who's in peewees and bantams because I was the same size as them then. And but yeah, I thought that was, for today's NHL, I thought that was excessive and unnecessary.
Well, you're talking about Tyson Nash, and the thing is, I broadcast for bad teams too. It's easier to talk about the other team or bitch out the refs than talk about your own team. And Tyson, the Coyotes have been bad for so long, right? And that, trust me, I wrote the book on that. But you said something at the start on this. The Oilers are a different team than they were 2 months ago. Clearly they are, but tell me how, Bob, how long can they continue this change?
Well, personnel-wise, they're better. Like, in fairness to Dave Tippett and Jim Playfair, those guys did a good job. The Oilers, they missed the playoffs before those guys got here. When the pandemic shut down in 2019-20, they were second in the Pacific and 12th overall. Last year, the Canadian division, as you know, they finished second in the division and 11th overall. And but they went through a period where the team went 2-11-2. They had COVID and injuries, and they just could never get a complete roster. Then Ken Holland went out and made the biggest in-season addition that there's been in the league. And he gave up 0 assets to get it, and that's been Evander Kane. And Evander Kane's got 16 goals and 28 points in 31 games and is plus 16. Those numbers speak for themselves. So they get Evander Kane. They added Hyman in the offseason. They're playing RNH as a third-line center. Their 5-on-5, forward play has been the best. It's been the best since the 87-88 Oilers. I mean that. Like, I don't think the 89-90 Oilers won the cup, but I don't recall them having, in the regular season, the sort of depth that the Oilers forwards have. I mean, the kid line emerged that year in the 90 Cup run, but, they were thrown together after Winnipeg was up 3-1 in that series. So the Oilers are deep at forward. They can move the puck on the back end. They're going to finish with 4 30-plus point scores on defense for the first time since 08-09. However, the huge question marks come playoff time are, do they have a guy that can, steal games in the pipes? And is their defense going to be physical enough to stop cycles as the game changes? But, Rod, there's a stat. The stat is 5-on-5 goal share. That's a huge stat that illustrates how you can do come playoff time. The Oilers were 22nd in the league under Dave Tippett, and under Jay Woodcroft, they're 6th at like 56.5%. If you're in the top 8 in goal share 5-on-5 as a team, you can win. So I'd say they got, I just want them to make the playoffs first and see how they match up. Again, their goaltending, they don't have a top 10 goaltender in the world that can steal a game, Rod. So that's going to be a challenge.
Let me just stop you for a sec. I said some viewers have questions, and they do, Bob. If you don't mind, I'm going to jump right into it. They want to know where you stand on the MVP conversation, the heart between Leon and Connor. Do they split the vote and it goes to Matthews, or where are you on the heart discussion?
I think Connor McDavid, and I'm pretty sure within the hour he's going to be named the first or second star of the week. Rod, I think Connor McDavid's going to. If I had to choose between the two, Connor's been on 14-game point scoring streak right now, something like that. Like, he's just been on fire. For me, this year it's Connor. Like 2 years ago, there was no doubt about it. It was Leon. A year ago, there was no doubt about it. It was Connor. If it's picking an Oiler, I'm picking Connor, but it's a very fair question because Draisaitl did something yesterday that only 23 other NHLers have ever done, and that's had 2 50-goal, 100-plus point seasons. There's only 3 guys in the league currently that have had multiple 50-goal seasons. Obviously, Ovechkin and Stamkos being the other, and now Draisaitl's done it. And it's funny, Draisaitl's the only one of those guys that plays 3v5. So he's the only guy in the league when a team's 2-man down, he's on the ice taking the face off. So but I just think Connor has, yet again elevated his game down the stretch here. So for me, it's Connor. Austin Matthews has had a great year too. He benefits from playing with Marner. The Oilers have split McDavid and Draisaitl up, and that's benefited for the team.
They want to know an update on Bakersfield. They saw that you said you were there. What's happening with the Condors, how they look?
They've got a good program running right there, and it is a program, and that's something that it's interesting you mentioned Florida because Bill Zito interviewed for Edmonton's job when he was assistant GM at Columbus, and I'd say that Florida's doing some things analytically that are sort of, I don't know where you stand on that, but they've hit the home run. They've crushed it on some of their moves. Mason Marchment was a guy they stole out of the Maple Leafs. He's basically been a point-per-game guy this year. But Florida is in a tough division where they don't have the better. Tampa Bay's got the best goaltender there in terms of Vasilevsky. That said, one of the areas of strength that Ken Holland's really sort of changed the complexion to make up the Oilers organization is the development process. He wants his players over percolating. Bakersfield it's a good program. You know what? There's no pressure. Like, there's no media at all there. It's about 2 hours and 20 minutes away from Los Angeles. The emphasis under Jay Woodcroft and Keith Gretzky was for the Oilers' top prospects to play there. We're going to get an update. He's going to do my show today. Samorukov is a Russian defenseman that they signed to a 1-year extension. He got hurt the other night. Might be a shoulder injury. It might not be good news there. Philip Broberg, who's got a higher ceiling, was 8th overall pick, 1 pick before Zegras in the 2019 draft. He's going to be on the Oilers to start next season, but he's out right now. And I think he might be back within a couple of weeks. So they've got a lot of left shot. They got a lot of defensemen down there. That's the primary of focus with their prospects. And then they got a guy named Dylan Holloway, who, as you know, was on Team Canada's World Junior team. And he's their best forward prospect, and he's on a bit of a heater of late as well. But they've really focused on, playing their top-end guys, which hasn't – sometimes what happens with minor league teams is if the coach has worked his way up from the U-Haul or the ECHL, the AHL, he tends to favor those guys at the expense sometimes of the higher prospects. So I think we're headed the right direction. And they got a great goaltender, Stuart Skinner, who will be on the Oilers. Like, Broberg, Skinner, and Holloway are all going to be with them into next season. And so they've got a much better structure in place than maybe they had back in, say, 13 to 16 in terms of developing their prospects.
I think Skinner's the best goalie you got. Can you answer this in 20 seconds? One viewer wants to know why the Oilers didn't draft Sebastian Cossa from the Oil Kings. Was he available to them?
No, they had the 19th pick traded down to 22, and Cossa went at 15 to Detroit.
Okay, good.
You said
good
20
stuff.
seconds.
Okay, well, 30. Yeah, that was very good. Well, you talk about what they're doing in Florida. Hey, they had to give up a lot. Owen Tippett, I watched him with Philly last night. He's a hell of a player. They had to give him up for Giroux. It's the way it goes. Bobby, thanks for this. Keep her rolling, man. Hope it's a long playoff run.
All right, me too. Thanks for having me on, Rod. Take care.
Our good friend Bob Stauffer, Oilers color guy. Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching the RP Show on YouTube. And don't forget, we're live daily on YouTube from noon to 2 Eastern. If you like what you see, hit subscribe. And if you like the program, check around for other segments of The Rod Pedersen Show here on YouTube.